U mene, tako. Ja kroz sredinu jer nema straha, ok? Koliko? 39. A ne, to nije u pravcu lopte, ovdje u ovom pravcu. 0 nasad. Davaj, moraš šta iza mene. 28. Those serves felt really good. Let's see what the people have to say about my serve. This sounds interesting. I can't even imagine how big your serve would be if you had a full leg drive. It reminds me so much of Wawrinka's serve. His serve doesn't have a full leg drive, but still hits 130 miles per hour. Would save your arm from doing a lot of work. Impressive, such accuracy on that serve. Well, thank you so much for this comment. You know what? I'm gonna try to get more leg drive on my serve. All right, here we go. Let's get those legs working. Let's get that leg drive activated. Come on. All right, here we go. So basically, I'm gonna try to jump on this serve and get a nice leg drive, and let's see what happens. Does not feel good in my shoulder though. Yikes, this was supposed to save my arm. My arm is killing me. That hurts. I gotta stop. Let me do my regular serve without the leg drive, and let's see what happens on this one. So to the person that wrote that comment, another comment was well meant, and I thank you for making such a nice comment, but you obviously didn't take a look at my research on the leg drive on the serve. I've made 2 videos that encompass the leg drive in its entirety. I even looked at the greatest servers of all time, and I studied how their feet leave the ground. The first video I want everybody to take a look at is the leg drive, and the second video I made is the passive leg drive. And basically, in those videos I explain that on a tennis serve, there is no leg drive. There is no active jumping. Remember, driving the legs, pushing with the legs is basically the same as jumping. There is no such thing on a tennis serve. There's not one high-level player that intentionally or consciously jumps on the serve. You saw what happened when I tried to jump on my serve. It completely destroyed my serve. I couldn't get it in at all. This is not how you serve. What happens on a tennis serve is that the legs come up on their own. The players are not consciously jumping. Now, before I get into detail why the things that I just said are not based on my opinion, these are based on hard facts, they're based on data, this is based on the way the feet are behaving when they leave the ground. These are hard facts, guys. This is an undeniable fact that what I'm saying is the truth. But before I tell you in great detail what the reasons are that we as tennis players don't actively jump, let me tell you a quick little story about the greatest coach that I'd ever known, my dad. Rest in peace. When I was 16 years old, I played the state championship, the Westfalenmeisterschaften in Germany, and I played against a guy in the semifinal that I'd beaten maybe a month before very easily. And in this match, for whatever the reason may have been, maybe I saw some pros on TV, in this match I started bending super low on my serve and I was jumping. I remember this. Now the only reason why I remember it because my dad started yelling at me and telling me to stop jumping on the serve. And after the match we had a long talk, and he told me, which I lost that match by the way, he told me, I don't know what you were doing in that match, it's the worst serving I've ever seen from you. You barely got any serves in, you couldn't get any free points on your serve. Whatever you were doing there, you got to stop doing it. Now he knew that when I was trying to jump, this wasn't right. Now he didn't know the exact reasons why, he just knew it by feel, by instinct. And I've always known by feel and instinct, by common sense, that tennis players don't jump on their serve. But I wanted to know in great detail what is the case. So I conducted a lot of research on this subject. Now here's the thing, guys. There's 2 ways to jump. You can run and jump. Some of you see in basketball, some of you see on a high jump, some of you see on a volleyball serve. This is obviously not what happens on a tennis serve. We don't run forward and then take the momentum from the running by bending our knees and then jumping up. That's not what we do. We jump from a stationary position. Now the hard fact, and you can try all the stuff that I'm telling you out at home. When we jump from a stationary position, which basically the tennis serve is, it's a stationary position, We would never set up a jump like we set up a tennis serve. It makes, from a biomechanical standpoint, absolutely no sense. So why would we get on our toes, bend our knees, and bend our body backward, in some instances even bend the body forward? Nobody in their right mind would try to jump from a position like this. In fact, if you try to jump from a stationary position, what you're going to do is bend your upper body slightly forward, and you're going to push against the ground and get airborne. So obviously this is not what happens on a tennis serve. What happens, in fact, is there's a lot of different power sources executed on the serve. There's something that I call vertical momentum, which is basically when the body is bent in this way, where the knees are bent, we are on our toes, the body is either slightly bent backwards or forwards. In conjunction with that, there's also forward momentum, where the player slightly leans in, and when that entire system is accelerated upwards, the entire torso is thrusted upwards. And yes, the legs are involved in that process, so the legs straighten as well. If you take a look at the calf musculature, you can see that the calves are tightened, so the legs are straightening, but it's in conjunction with the entire body straightening. Why? Because we're straightening into the contact. So this is what propels the legs off the ground. Now look, in the first leg drive video that I made, I took my shoes off, and I'm going to take them off again. You know why? Because I want to show you something super interesting. So here's what happens to our feet when we leave the ground. Now, we don't violently spring up off the ground like this. Let's just say we're in a pinpoint stance like this, right? And now the feet do not violently come up like this. Here's what happens. The back foot will leave the ground first, and the foot will roll towards the tip of the foot, and then we'll get airborne first, and slowly the front foot will follow. This is absolutely impossible to do if you consciously try to jump. Also, if you take a look at the player's feet, the feet are passively dangling in the air. This is not just the case on the serve, it's the case on the forehand, the backhand. Anytime a player is executing a passive leg drive, the feet will passively dangle in the air. Now, do players ever jump on any strokes? Yes, they do. They do it intentionally. Players will do a jumping forehand or a jumping backhand. Players like Kyrgios or Marat Safin back in the day, Marcelo Rios did jumping backhands. That is an intentional jump. Completely different to how Federer or Djokovic hit a forehand, they get airborne. You'll see the feet are passively dangling in the air, and that's what happens on every single tennis serve, on every single player. And here's the important question. What about you guys at the rec level? Should you leave the ground with both feet? Is this something that's important? It absolutely is. An optimally struck serve will have both feet in the air. It doesn't matter how high in the air. If you take a look at my first leg drive video, I showed you that even some of the greatest servers of all time only leave the ground by a little bit. How high you get off the ground has absolutely nothing to do with the quality of the serve. I know some mechanically unsound serves, especially on the WTA Tour, where players are getting a huge lift off the ground. They're up in the air about this much, but they still have really bad serves from a technical standpoint. There's a lot of flaws in those serves. I'm not going to name these players by name, but this is absolute fact. The amount of height that you get on your serve has absolutely nothing to do with the quality of the serve. And now let's get back to the commenter who said that it's going to be hard on my arm if I don't use a leg drive. And this is something that's absolutely wrong. In fact, when I was jumping on my serve, I hurt my shoulder a lot more than when I was doing my passive leg drive. So here is what will help you guys at the recreational level, is if you execute all the power sources in unison. So there's going to be forward momentum, there's going to be vertical momentum, there's going to be horizontal momentum, there's going to be swing momentum. When you utilize all four in unison, what should happen on your serve is that the feet will leave the ground. And now the two power sources that are going to make that happen the most is going to be forward momentum and vertical momentum. So if you attempt to throw the ball inside the baseline, you load your body in a way where you're going to be on your toes, bending your knees, leaning slightly forward, and trying to bend backwards as much as you can. As you accelerate upwards from this position, naturally most players will get airborne, especially when we're talking about forward momentum. It's almost as if players are losing balance and they're just falling with their body weight into the court, and naturally they'll get airborne, they'll land inside the court. I've had many students at the recreational level, even some older students, 70 years plus, who were never able to get airborne on the serve, and I taught them the fundamentals. All of a sudden they started getting airborne. They were getting the passive leg drive. Now here's the crazy thing. Every single one of them would always ask me, Nick, did I leave the ground on the serve? So they had absolutely no idea that they left the ground. I sometimes will have to record them and prove it to them. I have to pause the tape right at the moment of contact to prove to them that they were actually off the ground, because they had no idea. Whatever happens down here is not happening consciously, guys. You don't actively drive the legs, you don't push the legs come up on their own. And I'm not just making this stuff up. I've taught the passive leg drives to hundreds, if not thousands of students. Now, does it matter how high you get up off the ground? Not at all. Even if you do what Brad Gilbert calls a credit card jump, meaning that you're leaving the ground by such a little amount that you could stick a credit card on your feet, this is still adequate, and this will still allow you to land inside of the court. So what's going to happen at any level of play is that the amount of vertical lift that you get, the amount of height that you get on your serve is going to depend on your athletic abilities. And here's what happens with many players. As the athletic abilities decline, so does the amount of vertical lift that they get on the serve. Personally, I've experienced this. I want you to take a look at my serve when I was 16 years old. Take a look at how high off the ground I was getting then, and take a look at how high off the ground I'm getting today. I'm 44 years old. I stopped training many years ago. I'm not in the same athletic condition as I used to be, and obviously my body is not accelerating upwards as fast as it used to. Also, I'm heavier than I was back in the day, and obviously I'm not leaving the ground the same amount as I did many years ago. And by the way, I'm not worried about that at all. It is not causing any problems on my serve, because the vertical momentum is not where the vast majority of power actually comes from. The vast majority of power on the serve comes from the swing momentum. But when the swing momentum, meaning when the arm is supported by the other power sources, you're going to get this feel of effortless power. So you do not need to concern yourself in how high you get off the ground if you get off the ground even with a credit card jump. Now, to put your mind at ease, I want to tell you that even the greatest female server of all time, Serena Williams, when she was younger, she was getting off the ground a lot higher than she does now. And one of the greatest servers of all time, Greg Rusetsky, lefty, he had a very small height when he left the ground. It was somewhere around here, and this is one of the greatest servers of all time. So, in conclusion, as long as you're utilizing all the fundamentals on the serve, of course, and if you're utilizing all the power sources in unison, it doesn't matter how high you get off the ground. Well, it's important that you do get off the ground and land inside the baseline.